Welcome to our session, which is part 2 of our systematic and scoping review workshop series. Today is going to focus on organization and reporting for systematic and scoping reviews. My name's Malin Lay, and I'm one of the health sciences librarians here at the University of Manitoba. My colleague Janice Linton is going to be managing the chat. She's on the call, and she will put in the link to the slides for today's session if you want to follow along and see the links. And I'll also show you where they're posted. So yeah, welcome to this session. Let's get started. So the outline for the class today is, first, we're just going to go over always that basic housekeeping. I'll touch on my objectives for the session today, and then we'll kind of dive into the content, which is how to get organized, documentation, search logs, and in some ways, today's session is maybe the least the least sexy of the systematic review topics, but I think that this is some of the most important because it's not always talked about or shared. And so what you will get from this session is the kind of the tips and the tricks of people who do this work all the time. So systematic and scoping reviews is a huge part of my job. And over, 15 years of doing it and working on, so many reviews, there are lots of things that I can share and that Janice will be able to share about how to make the process easier for you. So even if you've never done one or you're just getting started, how can you kind of make the process more efficient and really save yourself a lot of time and headaches by thinking about how you organize things before you get started. So in terms of housekeeping and context, we are asking people to be muted today just for a larger session. We are recording, so please just leave your video off unless you want to be captured. Really encourage questions and discussions via chat. And if anything comes up, Janice, that you feel you want me to address to everybody, or you want me to show something, please just feel free to unmute and let me know. And at the end of the session, I'll also, of course, leave time for questions and can address stuff in depth as well there too. So Janice and I are both located here at the Bannatyne campus, and I wanted to point out our colleagues who are also located on this campus. So I've listed their names there, as well as a QR code. If you're within the Rady Faculty of Health Sciences, we're always happy to chat about your projects. That is how you can get a hold of us, using that QR code. However, we also recognize that more and more we have people from the Fort Garry campus who are working in different subject areas. So I wanted to point out where you can get help as well. So this is the link for all the different disciplines and subject areas and faculties within the whole university system. So you can see that if you are in anthropology or accounting, if you just click on those, you will be directed to, let me go to say agriculture, agribusiness. You'll be able to see that you can reach out to Ryan if you have questions. So that link is there. And I also want to point out, let me flip back to my slides here, that in addition to what we are talking about here today, we also have a guide related to systematic reviews being done in the sciences. So that link is right here and sorry, my slides are being a little persnickety, is a helpful resource if you are thinking about doing a review and you're in the sciences. So highly encourage people to check that out. Okay, and a reminder that if you are a graduate student and you have registered and are planning, if you register and attend all 5 of the sessions, you will receive credit on your experience record. So this is done automatically. It will take until the end of the sessions and likely until the end of June to happen. But if you have questions about the process or it is not showing up on your experience record, encourage you to reach out to our library kind of general email address that is listed there if you have questions or concerns. And just to let people know that if they missed the first session, it is now available online. There is both a recording and slides that are available that you can watch on our YouTube page, or you can just review the slides and see all the links and everything there. So this will be updated with part 2 once we're done today's session as well. So we're really trying to document everything. And once all 5 sessions are done, everybody who's registered for any one of the sessions will receive an email with links to the slides and the recordings and an evaluation. So everything will be sent out to people as well. Okay, so I know I talked about this at the beginning, kind of what this session is about, but I just want to reiterate that I'm not going to be talking about how you actually go and search databases today. Janice is going to be covering that next week, but I really do think the content here kind of is just as valuable in terms of when you are starting a project or even if you've done them before. So it really lays the groundwork, I would say, for what is required for doing a review. And what you're going to see too is that this isn't what I talk about today isn't just what, say, we recommend, but a lot of it is what is recognized, or pardon me, what is required by international organizations and guidelines for this type of work. So pointing you in the direction of looking at those. So in terms of the session today, my objectives are that by the end of the session today, you'll be able to outline what needs to be documented. Oh, sorry for my spelling mistake there, in a systematic or a scoping review. You'll be able to create your own file structure to organize your files. You'll be able to discuss different protocol formats and just have greater awareness of tips and tricks required for proper record keeping. So let's get into getting organized. So these are things that we want to think about even before you kind of start looking at diving into a project. So when we're going to focus on kind of getting organized for your literature search, but when the project is about to kick off, you and whoever else is on the team kind of want to think about how do you get organized for the project as a whole. And some of this might be really straightforward for a lot of people, but maybe not. It's important to recognize that these large-scale reviews are large, and they will involve a lot of different people, different researchers who bring kind of their own specialized knowledge and their expertise to the project, and that they can take a long time. And one of the challenges I've encountered, and I think that is quite common, is that because of the large scope and the different locations, is that communication and sharing information and figuring out how you're going to do that can be really challenging and really important. So team members, you might be scattered kind of all over the world, and you'll definitely have kind of competing priorities in terms of where this project falls, in terms of how you want to get it done. So you want to figure out what tools you're going to use for, say, meetings and file sharing, both kind of when the review is active, and also what you're going to do in order to kind of share and house supplementary material that's created as part of the project. So just having it on your own local drive is going to make it much more difficult for the rest of the team members to access this. So there's some suggestions here. So people, I think, are very familiar with using cloud-based systems, whether that's Google Docs or the Microsoft environment or Dropbox, for sharing team documents. That way everyone can kind of see things and update them. When you are planning meetings, especially if people are in different time zones, using tools like Doodle or AgreeDate can be extremely helpful. There's different software available for obviously having online meetings. And then in terms of public documents, so that, again, that supplementary material, I have some suggestions here. OSF stands for Open Science Framework. It is becoming very popular for teams, research teams, to even put their protocol for a review up there, and then any files that or data that are associated with the project, whether that's your literature search, how you did your analysis, all of those Excels, things like that can be shared, and you can decide whether to share it publicly or have it housed online and have access restrictions. You can also share any data that comes about as a result of a project through the U of M data repository, which is called Dataverse. I share all of my literature searches there. And I've linked out to a page that has additional ideas for how you might want to share documents, get organized, meet as a team. There's some ideas there. Okay, at this point, you also want to think about how are you going to organize. So once you've decided on, say, you're going to use Google Docs or you're going to use Microsoft OneDrive, for example, how do you want to set up your folder structure to share documentation? So it can help you to, you can share it in the cloud or on a hard drive. I tend to almost store everything in the cloud now. Always a good idea to maybe create a backup. And I have a link here as well as on our website of an example folder structure. So you can see what that looks like. Maybe I'll even just download it right now so you can see what that's going to look like. Oh, you know what? I think that link is not working. Okay. I'm coming back to that in a second. So I'll show you, I have a different link that will hopefully show that. And so once you have your file structure organized, you also want to come up with some kind of meaningful naming conventions for your files. So a good example is that when you search a database, you download what are called RIS files that have all of the references of your articles. And those come with very generic names. So it will be like something like export.ris. And then that will each database will give you almost an exact same name, but you need to give it a name that tells you exactly what's in that file because you need to be able to tell them apart. So in my example here, you can see, pardon me, this is an example kind of title that I would use for an RIS file. So I indicate the database where I got the references, the date that I did the search, kind of what it is, and how many references were found in that search. You're going to need all this information later, so you might as well just put it in the file name to kind of save yourself some time. Definitely avoid words like final or draft or most recent in any of your file naming. Be very specific about what exactly is in that file, and so everyone kind of has a common understanding about that. So those are just broad overarching elements for any kind of organization for any project, whether it's a systematic review or you're working on any other kind of research project. But I just want to emphasize kind of good principles of organization for that. So in order to talk about what needs to be documented and what needs to be kind of reported, just briefly a review on review types, different review types. We talked about it 2 weeks ago, but as a refresher, there are a wide variety of review types. Over time, there seem to get more and more. One of the initial articles that talked about different review types, so that's systematic, scoping review, rapid review, umbrella review, integrative review, etc. This is kind of one of the foundational articles by Grant and Booth from 2009. And there's a table here that documents all those different review types. There was an update in 2019, and then I think they went to 43 different review types. And so there's been tools created to help you figure out what review type is right for you, which is linked to on our guide, and we talked about it last week. And even kind of some helpful decision trees or tables to help you think about what kind of review do you want to do to kind of guide you through it. So lots of different ways to think about what review is most appropriate for the question that you're trying to answer. And then that will help guide you in terms of what needs to be documented. Okay, so as an example, just so you can, because we're focusing a lot on scoping reviews and systematic reviews, I just wanted to show you a little bit of a difference in terms of what those questions that you might be trying to answer look like. So this is some examples of questions that would be applicable for a scoping review. And they tend to, again, be more, they're broad, they're exploratory, they're looking into kind of what and how. So these are questions like, how is resilience conceptualized within the higher education literature? You know, how do researchers view the role of resilience within higher education and workplace readiness? They are not, you know, a singular answer. There's not going to be a right or wrong answer with these kinds of questions. You're really trying to explore what's out there. And this would be an example of a systematic review question on a similar kind of topic, right? So do mindfulness meditation exercises increase nursing level students of resilience? So you can see they're related to resilience, they're related to students, and they're looking at specific interventions, but the difference between a scoping review question and a systematic review question are quite different. So that's kind of just a reminder. And the thing to think about is that the degree of searching that you do might vary based on the review type that you choose, but all of them do require you to adhere to kind of the guidelines for conducting these reviews, as well as what needs to be reported, so the reporting guidelines. And I just want to really emphasize to people the distinction between these, between methodological guidance and reporting guidelines. So what is the difference between these? So a methodological guidance is basically your instruction manual that is going to tell you how to conduct a review properly. And so you can see that's that there. And then I've given some examples. So there's a lot of guidance in the health sciences. So you can see some of them listed here, but really what's happening is that in the social sciences, in sciences as well, you're beginning to see more of that as well. So I've linked out to some guidance on how to do a review related to the social sciences listed here as well. Meanwhile, a reporting guideline is going to tell you what information you actually have to include in your published manuscript when you write up that project. So it's really to make sure that your research and the article that results from it, that things are transparent and that others could replicate what you have done or are doing if they wanted to. So some examples here. So just to kind of, I really reiterate this, reporting guidelines, they don't tell you how to do the project. They tell you how to write it up. So if you ever are reading an article, a review article yourself, and the authors say that they conducted their review according to, say, the PRISMA guidelines, that is a hint that they do not have a solid understanding of, say, methodology. This just tells you what to report. So again, some of these here, a lot of these are PRISMA guidelines. They can kind of give you clues on how to do things, but they actually don't give you that instruction. They just say, this is what you need to talk about. And so these type of guidelines here, in particular, that the PRISMA ones, Roses is related to environmental sciences. Campbell is related to the social sciences. They really are, again, showing you what you need to report properly so that you can document your work. So again, we're seeing more and more coming from outside of health sciences and more within different disciplines. So if you don't see it listed here, you can, and you're in a different discipline, you can reach out to us and talk about whether there are reporting guidelines for your discipline, or, you know, kind of quick Google searches will also indicate that pretty quickly as well.
Medline or Medline, Mayland. I'm just going to break
Yes.
in here for a moment. I did get a message that there is going to be a test to the emergency broadcast towers at Fort Garry at 1 o'clock. So I
Okay.
thought I'd mention that in case anybody's at Fort Garry and you hear some alarms or chimes or something, it is a test. And also, just in case your phone starts to blow up with messages from people, they might be experiencing that test. So I just thought I'd mention that. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Janice. So this is an example of what's called Prisma S. So this is the reporting. It's a what's called an extension, and basically it is indicating if you are documenting your search strategy for a review, what do you want to include? So again, this kind of originated in health, but this is applicable for any discipline. So you can see here, things that you are going to want to include is the name of the database. If you searched multiple databases at the same time, did you do citation searching, which means like you found some articles and then you looked at, well, who cited those articles and who did they cite? So basically how you gathered up, you did your data collection. And then they want you to document all of the searches that you ran and you did. And if you have done any updates, if there was any peer review involved, those kinds of things. So this reporting guideline is really applicable for everybody. And then what you kind of do is you go through and you make sure that you have each one of these. And so if you're new to doing reviews, it can be very helpful, in addition to looking at the methodological guidance on how to do it, is to look on what needs to be reported, because that will help you in the process to be like, well, do I need to write this down? Oh, let me check. Yeah, I do need to write it down. So they're very complementary and can be very helpful in guiding you through the process. Okay, so then let's get into search documentation. So why is documentation important? So there is, of course, kind of the goal of transparency and accountability and reproducibility of the process. And that is what all of these reporting guidelines are trying to promote. A slightly kind of more practical, oh, they all came at once. A more practical consideration is that you need to be ready for everything. So I've listed here journal peer reviewers. I think anyone who's involved in academia or has submitted, kind of hear jokes about reviewer number 2 and how critical they can be. And I will note that journals now, not all of them, but I would say some of them are getting librarians or information specialists to say review the actual search that you do. And I have been reviewing them, and I have rejected or set back for major revisions if the quality of the search itself and how it's documented is not of a certain standard. So documenting everything will help make that peer review process that much easier. So you also may need to kind of defend your decision making during the peer review process. So a peer reviewer might say, well, why did you do this? Why did you search in this database and not that database? Or why didn't you use this particular term, or those kinds of things? So if you have kept kind of good notes on the choices you've made and why they were needed, it will help you justify your choices during the peer review process. So the project takes so long to do from start to finish, and there's so much involved that it's very easy to forget things or forget why decisions are made, or people move on and off projects. So as long as it's documented, you know that you can go back to it. And also, you are probably going to need to update a search. So the odds are, yeah, pretty good that when you kind of have first started the project to when you finally write it up and submit a manuscript, your search is going to be out of date, and you'll need to redo it and see if any new material that is relevant has come out. So if everything is documented, it just makes it so much faster for you to do it and then incorporate any new results that may come out into your written manuscript, just to make everything as current as possible. So what do you want to keep? So you want to obviously keep anything that is noted in reporting standards. So say in Prisma or in Roses, depending on what your discipline is, anything that they say you need to report on, you want to keep that. I also highly recommend that you keep anything related to how you developed your search strategy. So again, this is your data collection. So think about what you would document if you were doing, say, experiments, right? You want to keep everything. So you want to write down, well, what was your thought process in terms of how you created your search strategy, and explain your choices. Why did you use this term and not that term? You want to include any keywords or subject headings or revisions that you made. You want to include, as I've mentioned a couple times, the databases that you used, the dates that you searched. And you want to find the number of results that you found per database. So you want to document all of that. So what that looks like often, or most of it looks like, is if you keep your final search strategy from each database, including all the search syntax. So what that means is not just, sometimes maybe if you've read reviews where it will say something like, we used keywords and subject headings related to these 3 concepts. And then they just list those 3 concepts. And that is their documented search. That is not, you can't replicate that. You can't redo that. So I'll show you some examples of what a full search strategy with search syntax looks like. That's what you want to keep. You also want to keep all of your files that you download from individual databases that contain your actual references, contain your data that you're going to look at. So keep all of this. Okay, so I'm going to work through kind of a sample question. This is a search I did way back in like 2019, but I kept okay documentation. So I wanted to show you kind of what I kept and what that looks like. So the question is basically, what are the disease-related costs in patients with irritable bowel disorder? So imagine that this is your research question. The first thing you want to do is you want to kind of move that question into searchable concepts. And that is something that Janice will then talk more at length about next week. But if you just pull out kind of the key concepts that are searchable, those are going to be related to cost, like economic implications, and irritable bowel disorder. So that's the question. So what my documentation looked like for this project is, you can see here, I've got kind of concept number 1 is my irritable bowel disorder. I've listed it up here. Then when I was kind of working on creating it, MESH stands for medical subject headings. They are the subject headings that are most used in any health sciences project, but different databases will have their own subject headings. So just look for those. And you can see here, and then I start kind of brainstorming different keywords that are related to that topic too. And I make notes about it. So for example, I had originally put in the keyword of IBD, but then I've crossed it out and I've made the note about why. And that was because it has too many acronyms. So I think irritable bowel disorder, but IBD can apparently mean a lot of different things. And then again, I make all of these notes. I had the term pouchitis. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced that, but in talking with the content experts, they said, not relevant, take it out. And so I say, look at that email from that date. That is my justification. So if anyone came back and said, why didn't you use this term? I can say, this is why I didn't use this term. So again, it's just writing everything down. This is what my search concept looked like for looking at the cost or economic evaluation. So again, this is me looking at different terms that are out there. This is me just brainstorming different keywords that are related to economic cost, right? So budgeting, cost benefit analysis. Maybe I want to think about quality of life, all these different things. I'm just kind of brainstorming. Am I going to use all of these? No, but I want to write it all down so I can see that process, and I'm documenting my kind of thought process. So sometimes if people talk about, well, why do these take so long? It's partly because of this part. It takes a long time to work through what you're going to include in your final search and what you're not going to include. So the final search for this project that I've linked to here, again, it was published, so hopefully it's not too small for you to see. But you can see from search line 1 to 14 are all the different ways that I have searched for literature related to inflammatory bowel disorders. From line number 16 down to 34 is everything related to kind of costs and economics. And then I add those 2 concepts together. So this is the final search that I ran in the Ovid Medline database. And when you look at this, you don't see all the hard work, the hours of effort that went into creating it, but it took hours, hours and hours and hours to kind of test and that's what you want to document. So this is what is published in the final paper that's linked to up here, but this is the thought process that went into it behind the scenes. So when you are beginning your documentation process, these are some tips. So, and Janice, again, I keep saying next week when you talk about searching, but is you always begin your initial kind of search creation in your discipline's primary database. So I put this in here and now I have some thoughts about it, but as a health sciences librarian, I always create mine in Ovid Medline. We used to always recommend ERIC for education. I won't get too much into it, but ERIC is a US government database. It has been impacted by some of the decision-making down south related to education and funding for different databases. So it is not the same quality as it was even just 6 months ago. IEEE is the primary database for engineering. And so, but it can be a little bit tricky for searching, but think about, and this is something that you can talk with a librarian about. Think about where should you, based on your topic, based on your research question, where might you want to look for references or for articles, pardon me. So, and then start your search kind of there. And then you also want to, as I've mentioned, record any terms or keywords you tried that didn't yield helpful results. Include the dates you ran the searches, the number of results, and kind of any other weird things that you notice when you're doing it. And I have an example here of one of my colleagues' searches. Let me just see if I can get this to load up. Again, this is one of my colleagues' search, and you can see here, again, what she's done is she has noted what terms she has used, why she might want to change things, what she is finding when she's doing testing. And that means like looking at how many results you have and are they relevant, all of that kind of thing. So again, she just really documented all of her thought process related to searching, where she got terms, all of that kind of thing. Okay. So other tips is that if when you're beginning your search to create your search, you have found helpful terms from other reviews, or if you've used search filters, again, we'll talk about that next week, note them in your notes and in your manuscript. Where did you get this from? So searches that librarians or other researchers have created are considered our intellectual property. So if you're using them, which is great, you do want to cite where you got them from. So a good example, for example, if you're doing any research related to, say, children, children are obviously a well-studied area, and there are very well-developed searches built that you can kind of copy and paste, just plop into your search if you just are only interested in children. But you want to cite where you got that information, where you got that from. So the other thing you want to make note of is that often when people start a review, they know that there are certain papers that they want their search to find. Like, you know your area, right? So are there these relevant papers that you know you want your search to find? Those are called seed papers. Those are papers that you want to appear in your final search. So you want to make note of those too, so that, again, you can find them and test for them when you're building your search. Okay, again, if you think you'll remember it, write it down anyways. There was a paper that was published in 2018 that outlined how long it takes to do a review. And just for the searching component, some estimates are like 27 hours. So that's why it's important to write everything down, is because there's very little chance that you're going to remember all the little details that go into the study design of a project. Okay, so database accounts. So a pro tip kind of for any large scale review is to set up accounts with different database vendors so you can save your searches and quickly rerun them later. So for those of you who I know that this is a common kind of misunderstanding. There are what are called kind of vendors or platforms, and then within each one of them are different databases. And so Ovid is a vendor or a platform. I'm going to call it a platform. Ovid is a platform. And then within it are these different databases that are covered different subject areas. EBSCO is a platform, and these are some of the different databases within them. I used to give the example that the difference is between like a video game console. So EBSCO is like a video game console, and then each one of the databases is like a video game that you insert. So this is your whatever your Xbox, EBSCO is your Xbox, Academic Search Complete is your Fortnite that you inserted. And how can you tell that I have a 12-year-old son? So that's kind of how it works. But what you can do is you can create accounts in each of these specific platforms, and then that account will exist for all of the different databases. So you can kind of move a little bit seamlessly in from one to another. So set up accounts in every platform that you know you're going to want to use, and then you can write your login details down somewhere, make sure that they're easily accessible. And I'll note too, again, I've just listed some of the common ones. You really want each one of you, depending on your department, has a list of databases that are the best bets for your discipline if you go to the library site and use that kind of get help page. So definitely explore that, or contact your subject librarian for advice on which databases you might want to include for your topic area. Okay. When you are saving searches in a database is because you create an account, and then your searches that you run, you want to save those searches. And I would recommend using a standard naming convention that includes the name of the project, the name of the database, and the date of the search. So you can see here, I label all of my systematic or scoping reviews with SR. And then I put in that this is my search related to irritable bowel disorder and economics, the date I did the search, and the database that I did it in. You don't need to include how many results you found because that will change over time. You're going to keep that somewhere else. It doesn't need to be in the name of your saved search. So this is an example of an Ovid search in Medline. You can see Medline is listed right here. And if you use the Ovid platform, they have a great resource for being able to share your search with other people. So other people on your team, with your advisor, whoever, if you use this button called Copy Search History Link. If you try out this bit.ly link, you will be able to see the search that I did. So it's just bit.ly, and then with that /May 2024-SR. That will allow you to recreate the search I did exactly. And I'm going to try it out here. I'll just wait for that to load for a second. Again, just so you can see, I'm not going to wait the whole time. This is a relatively new feature, I would say, in the last couple of years, and it's really invaluable for documenting a search. So you can see here, it automatically goes into the database, the platform of Ovid, the database of Medline, and there is my exact search, and you would be able to do that as well. Okay. So I'm just kind of cognizant of time here because I know we started a bit late. So the other things to think about is when is in your database search log. So we've created some templates for you to use. They're linked here. They're also linked on our systematic review website page. So this link, and maybe Janice, if you don't mind throwing this in the chat, this is just the link to the part two session today. But you'll see that what we have on this page are sample search logs that you can use to do your own documentation, as well as what a sample filled in search looks like. So I'm going to show you one of them here. It's going to download. Okay, so this is the one that I built for everybody, just so you can kind of see that this is what it looks like. So you're welcome to use these for your own projects. So you name your project, you say who ran the search, when you ran it, and then you include the names of the databases, what platform or interface you used. If you have a URL that you can link to, did you name it? How many results? So this is where you're documenting how many results you found and what dates you found them on. You can see in my sample here, I've also indicated if I ran an update at a later point, and I put those numbers in here too. And then on the tab on the bottom, if you download it, you can see this is where I have my notes. Maybe that's a little bit small. Let me make it a bit bigger. So how I created my search, all documented in a single kind of Excel. And then I have a tab, or pardon me, a sheet for each different database that I search, where I put in my searches and how many results I found and the URL to recreate the search and everything. I just write it all down. So everything in red is just like an example, but I really encourage people, if you're about to start a review, to use something like this to document kind of what you're doing. And again, you can share that with different members of your team. Okay, just got to go back to PowerPoint. Okay, another part of searching that you want to document that's a little bit different is your gray literature. So we've been talking a lot about academic scholarly literature, so journal articles mostly. That is traditionally published. Gray literature is any material that isn't published in kind of a traditional place, like a book or a book article, or pardon me, a book chapter or a journal article. So think about conference reports, think about websites, social media. Preprints are journals that have been, pardon me, journal articles that have been submitted but haven't gone through peer review yet, and so are available on what are called preprint repositories. Even conference presentations, these are all considered gray literature. They are kind of a little bit harder, not hard to find. They're in different locations, and you have to approach your search a little bit differently. So it's not like you just build a single search like you saw some examples here, but you're really kind of playing around. A lot of gray literature searching is done on Google, or you go to specific, like you go to, say, the Public Health Agency of Canada, or you know, I don't know, NASA, or like a government agency for your discipline, and you look there. So when you're doing gray literature searching for your project, and how you do it and where you do it and how intensive you do it really depends on what your research question is. But you also want to document that too. So I have created, or not, I have, sorry, one of my colleagues created a search log for how you want to document your gray literature searching too. So in this case, more what you are documenting are your kind of exact searches, what you search and what you found. And the important thing to remember is, like, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be somebody else can't replicate it in the same way. Because if I search Google today and somebody in California searches Google with the exact same search tomorrow, we might get different results. But you're, again, just trying to be as transparent as possible about where you searched and what you included. If you don't know about whether you need to include gray literature in your search or not, contact your subject librarian. They're always happy to talk you through that. Okay, so I think because I kind of scurried through that last stuff, I did still finish on time, and to make sure that I have time for some questions. And of course, we've been talking about it throughout the session today. Is that next week, Janice will get to dive into the advanced searching session. And a reminder that next week's session is an hour and a half because there's just so much great content. So don't forget to register for that.